Welcome to Gender A Wider Lens, exclusive content for our listener community.
In these bonus episodes, we're going to dive even deeper into the issues surrounding gender in today's culture. Some weeks we'll respond to listener Q&As.
And we'll also be introducing a series called Dinner Party Conversations. And here we start grappling with the difficult question, such as how do we talk to people in real life about gender? And we also dive a bit deeper into topics that we touched on in the full episode.
Here is the bonus conversation. Okay, so in this portion of the conversation, which will be for our Patreon listener exclusive section, I'd love to just hear about like what happened next, because you went from dealing with all of this at your job with solicitors, but mostly privately, and then you went quite public. As you mentioned in the full episode, you put out the video on YouTube, and then you also were featured in this really powerful kind of investigative journalism piece. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are there other things that we're missing that you've done publicly?
So Four Corners was probably one of the first ones, although my case went out into the media in June, just talking about having been removed from clinical duty. So that was a newspaper article in the Australian newspaper.
Okay.
And then the next media thing was when we launched the Human Rights Commission complaint about the to challenge the hospital directive. And then after that was Four Corners. And so I had been in contact with other people, such as those people that you mentioned about Four Corners. And the general feeling was, it's a risk because the ABC in Australia is so biased. It's not open to considering the harms towards children in this area. But I've been talking to people like the parents of, kids at my kids' school and trying to find out, where do you get your media? Because my biggest concern has been for not just the kids, but the parents. And they'd kept sort of saying, the ABC. And so I thought, it's too big an opportunity to try and let parents know what's going on. So, I did. I was just so nervous. Like I had to get up in the middle of the night and go to the gym to run because I couldn't sleep. But so I did an interview for about 2.5 hours for Four Corners, but there was only just a few lines that ended up on there. And unfortunately, they did go with a suicide narrative to push the importance of transition, saying that a young person that had died because they hadn't accessed gender services, even though they had, that was clear from the story that they had incredible complexity with severe anorexia and obviously other problems. So, but they tried to use that. And so, unfortunately, that program didn't achieve what I would have loved it to.
There might have been another program then, because I watched another in-depth program that featured yourself and several other clinicians. I can't remember their names now. And they actually Spotlight. That's the one.
Yes.
That was a remarkable, it was like an expose kind of story. So that's the one. Okay. I would love to hear a little bit about that. So did you do Four Corners first and then Spotlight?
Yes.
So were you nervous going into Spotlight given your experience with Four Corners?
Oh, much less so.
Okay.
With Four Corners, I'd started to worry that I'd be discredited and I wouldn't be able to maintain any credibility to keep going. But that, even though the program hadn't gone well, I don't think I'd been discredited. And so I sort of thought, that's the worst that can happen. And then I knew that Spotlight was probably going to take a different take. And so I was just so relieved that it was actually getting discussed and talked about in the media. I just really was so relieved. So glad that someone was interested in putting some of the concerns forward.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Stella, that you want to ask Jillian before we jump into the big question, the dinner party conversation?
Well, that's where I was kind of leading into that. When you're out and about, because it must be a very difficult position to be in, just out and about. I know you've got kids and just your general life. So that, like, I'm just imagining, at the school run, you're suddenly there because you were working and you must be around a lot, and how you navigate that, because I'd say that's very difficult. Do you know what I mean? Do you say to people, well, I'm on leave because of gender?
Yeah.
Gender did it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I must say that no one seems to know, and then I don't raise it.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like maybe people don't necessarily want to talk about it. I have found in other settings, like I have another workplace, and the support I've received there has been very strong. So
I'm glad to hear that.
So yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess what's interesting for me is that when I was in high school, I read The Beauty Myth. I'm not sure whether you remember that book by Naomi Wolf.
Yeah.
When I was really into it, and but I barely understand it. Like I had to read it with a dictionary, but it started getting me interested in politics.
Yeah,
and so when I went to university, I got more into it, and there was an idea floating around back then that I got swept up in, which was that we were going to destroy the patriarchy by withdrawing all our energy from men. And so, and I had a best friend who was on the same wavelength, and so we were part of, this group of women, identifying as lesbians, or we were lesbian, as we used to say back then, and we, it was such a fun and exciting time, and we'd go out at night to clubs, and we'd go to political events, meetings, and we felt rebellious and strong.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was really swept up in intersectional ideology at university, and I remember coming back from a clinical placement. I was driving in the car, and I think the woman who was with me in the car was Sri Lankan. She was just a fellow medical student, and I was, crapping on, waxing on as I did back then, and I was saying something about injustice, and she asked me something about why, and I can't remember what she asked me, but I remember saying to her, "Oh, it's because we're privileged white women." And and she looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm not white, Jillian." And I was such a pain in university. I was just, in this ideology. I wasn't interrogating it, and
That's so funny.
it was. I was so crazy. Oh. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I understand what it's like to get swept away with an idea and how fun and exciting it can be. But it's the same sort of ideology.
And compelling. It's so compelling.
So compelling.
You've got a solution to all the problems. Look, it's this.
Yeah. And we used to be so rude about heterosexual people and rich people because we're poor students. And it was just, it was awful, but it felt fun. But luckily, no doctors got involved. With
that's the big difference. But there's something that does feel really powerful about taking control of the problems in your life and finding a new, completely subversive way to resolve problems and to think about the world. And I too completely get it. I get why young people feel so swept up, but it's the adult's job and it's the friend's job to just stay grounded in reality. Like your Sri Lankan colleague said, well, that's not true. I'm not. And so, I bet little moments like that started to bring you kind of back down to earth. That of course there are grains of truth in the beauty myth and a lot of these ideas, but actually we live in a very complex world and not everything is so simple.
Yeah. And I got really sick of always feeling different and separated and judging everyone. It gets tiring.
It is exhausting, and it makes you feel so alone and a little paranoid. I remember going through a type of feminist phase in my life that did not serve me well in terms of leaving the house and interacting with the world. So I really resonate. Jillian, thank you so much. It's been lovely to talk to you. And
you too.
We hope that across the seas you have friends and colleagues here that are really grateful for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
I bet we'll meet one day. I think things are going to really take off. There's so much energy. There's this kind of GenSpec Australia, GenSpec New Zealand's taken off. Things are happening in those countries finally, and it's well due.
Yeah. Oh, but God help New Zealand.
Yeah.
They're really
Australia's
struggling,
lucky to have you, you know.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
They are.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Jillian. Well, thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
See you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for being part of our listener community. Your financial support helps to make all of this possible.
For more ways to support the show, please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment on our episodes, and of course, spread the word about joining the paid community and all the exclusive content you can find there.
And for more information, please visit widerlenspod.com.